I was dead for 11 minutes, and in that time, Jesus showed me the terrifying truth the world needs to hear.
Not everyone who speaks in God's name truly belongs to Him. I saw it with my own eyes.
My name is Elena Grace Mitchell. I was 15 years old when my story began to unfold in ways I could never have imagined. To anyone else, I might have seemed like just another teenager in a small Tennessee town, quiet, average grades, someone who liked writing in her notebook and listening to music with earbuds tucked in. Nothing about me stood out. I wasn't a pastor's daughter, I wasn't a straight-A student, I wasn't even popular. I was simply me. But there was one thing about me that wasn't ordinary. I was born with a heart condition, congenital arrhythmia. The doctors always said it was manageable. They gave me pills, told me to avoid stress and caffeine, and reminded me to take care of myself. I tried, I really did. Most days, I could almost pretend I was normal. But deep down, I knew I was fragile. There was always a quiet fear lingering in the background, like a shadow I couldn't shake. What if one day my heart betrays me? Faith was something my family touched lightly, almost politely. We went to church on Christmas, sometimes Easter, sometimes not. We said grace before dinner, but it was quick, more habit than devotion. I believed in Jesus, but from a distance. He was more like an idea, a figure in old stories, than a real presence in my life. And if I'm honest, I didn't think he cared much about me. Why would he? I was just a 15-year-old girl trying to keep up with life and homework and friendships. Then came October 18, 2024. Picture day. I remember standing in front of the mirror that morning, frustrated with my hair, rushing out without breakfast. It felt like any other ordinary school day. Classes blurred by until 7th period biology. That's when everything shifted. One moment I was listening to the lecture, trying to focus. The next, my chest tightened, sharp, unrelenting, like an invisible fist gripping my heart. I tried to raise my hand for help, but my fingers wouldn't move. The world tilted. My vision narrowed. I heard the buzzing of lights fade into silence. And then, nothing. They told me later I had collapsed, my skin turning pale, then blue. My teacher cried out my name, desperately performing CPR until the ambulance arrived. But I didn't hear any of it. For 11 minutes, I was gone, clinically dead. I hadn't expected my life to stop in the middle of a classroom, at 15, on picture day. But that was the moment my ordinary life ended, and something I could never have imagined began. The first thing I remember after the darkness was not sound, but sight. I was no longer inside my body. I hovered above it, looking down at a scene that felt both familiar and impossibly distant. There I was, my 15-year-old frame lying motionless on the classroom floor. My skin was pale, lips turning blue, eyes closed as if in sleep. It was terrifying and surreal to realize that the body below me was mine. I saw Mr. Lawson, my biology teacher, on his knees beside me. His hands pressed against my chest, firm and desperate. His face was contorted with anguish, tears running down his cheeks as he begged life to return to me. Around him, my classmates stood frozen in shock, some with wide eyes, others with trembling hands over their mouths. A few cried quietly. The whole room vibrated with fear and panic, but to me, it was wrapped in silence. That was the strangest part. I saw lips moving, mouths screaming, but I heard nothing. No sirens, no shouts, not even the rhythm of hands pressing against my chest. It was as though the world had been muted, stripped of every sound except the thoughts inside my own soul. The silence was not empty, it was heavy, almost sacred, as if I had crossed a threshold no one else in that room could follow. I should have panicked. I should have been terrified watching my own lifeless body. But strangely, I wasn't. Instead, I felt an odd detachment, as though the body below was a shell I no longer belonged to. The fear that had always haunted me, the thought of my heart failing one day, was gone. In its place was a strange clarity. I am still here, even without that body. A realization settled deep within me. Life was more than heartbeat and breath. Something in me existed beyond flesh, beyond the fragile organ doctors always warned about. I was more than Elena Grace Mitchell, the girl with arrhythmia. I was a soul. And for the first time, I could sense that truth with certainty. Yet with that certainty came a question that chilled me: what happens now? As I drifted above, the room felt smaller, and the silence pressed in closer. I felt something behind me, something waiting, something I couldn't yet name. But I knew this: my story was no longer just about a girl who collapsed in biology class. Something larger had begun to unfold, and I was being carried toward it. At first, I thought the silence would consume me. But then, I felt it, a presence that was not of this world. Behind me, around me, through me, there came a glow. It wasn't harsh or blinding, it was gentle, as though light itself had a personality. The light didn't push me or drag me. It invited me. It spoke without words, saying, "Come closer, you are safe." And as I turned toward it, I realized how heavy I had always been, how burdened my heart was with fear, doubt, and the quiet ache of feeling unseen. All of that began to fall away, as if the light had a power to dissolve what I thought was permanent. The fear of dying, the uncertainty of being only 15, the loneliness of believing I was ordinary and forgettable, all of it slipped from me like dust carried off in the wind. What amazed me was that I didn't have to fight to let go. The light itself carried the weight away, piece by piece, until I felt lighter than I had ever known. It wasn't just brightness, it was love. Tangible, living love. Not the kind that depends on whether you're good enough, or smart enough, or worthy enough. This love didn't measure me, it embraced me. It filled every corner of who I was. For the first time, I felt like my existence made sense, like I wasn't a mistake or an accident. The closer I moved toward the light, the clearer my soul became. I wasn't walking. I wasn't flying. I was simply being carried, as though the light knew exactly how to hold me. And in that carrying, something shifted inside me. The questions that once haunted me no longer mattered. The ache in my chest, the weakness in my body, even the memory of lying lifeless on the classroom floor, all of it was gone. I realized then that I had never really known peace before. What I had called peace on earth was only the absence of problems. But this was different. This was peace as a presence, peace that breathed and held me, peace that knew my name. I should have wondered where I was going. But strangely, I didn't. Because in that moment, it no longer mattered what came next. All that mattered was that I was loved, completely and unconditionally. And in that love, I finally felt whole. When the light carried me further, I suddenly found myself standing somewhere new. It wasn't the classroom anymore, nor was it the silent space where I had floated. It was a garden. Yet to call it a garden feels almost unfair, because nothing on earth had ever resembled this place. The colors were alive. They didn't just appear, they pulsed, breathed, and reached into me as though they carried messages of their own. Every blade of grass, every flower, every tree seemed to hum with something greater, like each was born with its own melody. And somehow, I could hear those songs not with my ears but inside my very being. For the first time in my life, I felt a peace so whole it silenced even the faintest echo of worry. All my life, peace had meant the absence of pain or problems. But here, peace was a presence. It wasn't fragile. It wasn't temporary. It was strong, steady, and it welcomed me as though I had always belonged. I took a step and realized the ground beneath me didn't resist, didn't weigh me down. Instead, it lifted me. It was as if this place had been waiting for me, not because I had earned it, not because I deserved it, but because it was where I was meant to be all along. A strange thought crossed my mind. Had I been here before? The familiarity was overwhelming, like remembering a childhood lullaby you didn't know you had forgotten. My soul recognized this place even if my memory didn't. It felt like home, truer than any house, deeper than any family bond, more permanent than any identity I had carried on earth. I had always felt out of place in my life, too fragile, too ordinary, too easily overlooked. But in this garden, all of those feelings dissolved. I wasn't measured by grades, by looks, by abilities, or by the limitations of my heart condition. Here, I wasn't defined by weakness. I was defined by belonging. I stood there, overwhelmed, realizing this, I wasn't lost. I wasn't a mistake. I wasn't forgotten. I was created for this. And though I didn't yet understand what would come next, I knew something had shifted forever. My story wasn't about survival anymore, it was about remembering who I truly was. And then, it happened. I felt him before I saw him, like every part of me suddenly knew someone greater was near. I turned, and there he was. Not a painting on a church wall, not a figure made of stained glass, not an idea in my imagination. It was Jesus. Alive. Real. Present. He stood a short distance away, clothed in white that wasn't fabric at all, but light woven into form. His presence wasn't just around me, it was through me. Every fear, every doubt, every insecurity trembled under the weight of his holiness. And yet, strangely, I didn't feel crushed. I felt safe. Then I looked into his eyes. How do you describe eyes that hold eternity? They were deep, endless, carrying every truth I had ever longed for. But more than knowledge, they carried love, gentle, steady, unwavering love. In that instant, I realized something. He had seen everything about me. Every sin, every tear, every lonely night when I doubted if God was real. And still, he loved me. I couldn't stand beneath that gaze. My knees gave out, not from fear, but from awe. I expected judgment. Instead, I found embrace. I had spent years believing I was ordinary, easily forgotten. But in his presence, I understood, I was fully known. Not just the good parts, not just the strong moments. Every weakness, every wound, every scar. He knew them all, and none of it made him turn away. His smile was unlike anything I had ever seen. It wasn't just kindness, it was home. The kind of smile that tells you, you belong. You are safe. You are mine. I broke down in tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release. For the first time, I didn't have to prove myself. I didn't have to hide. I didn't have to wonder if I mattered. In his presence, I knew, I was loved without condition. This wasn't the Jesus of stories or traditions. This was the living Christ. And being near him changed everything I thought I knew about life, about faith, about myself. Friend, if you are reading this now, know this, the same Jesus who saw me sees you. The same Jesus who loved me loves you. His love is not distant, it's here, reaching for you, even now. If you desire his protection over your life, leave a comment below. Let your words be a prayer of trust. Because when you open your heart, Jesus will cover you with his love and keep you safe. Then he spoke. Elena. Not child, not daughter, not even you. He spoke my name. And the way he said it, it wasn't just sound, it was recognition. In that moment, I remembered something I didn't even know I had forgotten. I was created for him. My life wasn't an accident, my story wasn't random. Every breath I had taken, every longing I carried, was leading to this moment of hearing my name on his lips. I broke down. Tears spilled freely because that single word, my name, carried more weight than every affirmation I had ever longed for on earth. People had said my name before, but never like this. Never with such love, never with such ownership, never with such eternity woven into it. Is this heaven? I whispered, my voice trembling like a child who didn't want to break the silence. He smiled, and even his smile was like light itself, bright but tender, powerful yet safe. You are standing in a glimpse of it, he said, but it is not yet your time to stay. His words pierced me. My heart sank, not the physical heart but something deeper. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go back to the fragile body on a classroom floor. I wanted to stay here, in his presence, in this peace that held me more securely than anything I had ever known. But why am I here, then? I asked. There was desperation in my voice, but also curiosity. He looked at me with compassion so deep it felt like oceans. Because there are things I must show you. And when you return, you must tell them. Return. The word echoed inside me like thunder. I didn't want it. I wanted eternity. I wanted him. But at the same time, I felt a strange courage rising in me, because if he willed me to return, then my life had meaning beyond what I had known. For the first time, I realized that belonging to him didn't mean escape from the world. It meant being sent into it, with purpose. His words settled over me like both a weight and a gift. You will return, Jesus said, his voice steady yet tender, because there is truth that must be spoken. And your voice, yes, your voice, will carry it. I froze. My voice? I was only 15. I wasn't a preacher. I wasn't a scholar. I wasn't someone people would line up to listen to. I was just a girl who still scribbled stories in her notebook and worried about fitting in at school. Why me? I whispered, the question slipping out before I could stop it. My chest ached with the thought. Surely there were stronger, wiser, holier people who could carry such a task. Surely someone else could speak better, louder, with more authority. But his eyes didn't waver. He looked at me as though my question didn't surprise him at all. Because you still see clearly, he said. Because the world has not yet buried your heart in fear and pride. Because the enemy does not expect it. Those words pierced me. I realized then that my youth, my weakness, the very things I thought disqualified me, were the very reasons he chose me. Not because I was strong, but because I was still small enough to depend on him. Not because I had authority, but because my voice could not be mistaken for pride. But, who will listen? I asked again, tears blurring my vision. Those who are ready, Jesus said gently. Not everyone will hear, but those whose hearts are open will recognize truth when you speak. You will not speak from arrogance, but from honesty. That is why I send you. Something inside me trembled, not with fear but with a new kind of courage. For the first time, I began to see that my life wasn't measured by years lived, but by obedience given. Even at 15, I could be used. Even at 15, I could carry a truth the world needed. His words didn't remove all my doubts. But they planted something deeper, purpose. And purpose is stronger than fear. Jesus took my hand, and suddenly the garden around us shifted. The peace that had filled every corner of my being gave way to something sobering. We were standing on a hill, looking over the world as if time and distance had collapsed. Cities, streets, people, all of it stretched out beneath us, alive yet unaware that they were being watched. I noticed a darkness creeping like smoke. It wasn't nightfall, it was deception. It wrapped itself around hearts and minds, almost invisible, almost convincing. And then I saw him. A man stood on a stage before a vast crowd. His voice stirred emotions, his words sounded right, and people clung to every sentence. They raised their hands, they wept, they shouted Amen. He quoted scripture, he spoke in the name of God, but something was wrong. Deep inside, I felt the dissonance. His heart wasn't aligned with the one I was standing beside. I turned to Jesus, confusion heavy in my chest. He looks like he belongs to you. Why do I feel this weight? Jesus' eyes were steady, filled with both sorrow and authority. Because his lips speak my name, but his heart does not belong to me. He builds his kingdom, not mine. As I watched, the crowd grew louder. They were captivated, blinded by charisma and eloquence. They couldn't see what I now saw, the mask. And then Jesus spoke words that pierced me deeper than anything I had heard so far. The mask will fall. His voice carried both judgment and mercy, as if truth itself was preparing to shatter the illusion. When it does, many hearts will break. Some will walk away in despair. But others will awaken. And you, Elena, must speak before that day comes. Warn them. Tell them not to place their faith in men, no matter how godly they may appear. Tell them to test every spirit. Tell them to know my voice for themselves. I felt small, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was entrusting me with. But at the same time, I understood why he chose me. Not because I had power, but because truth spoken from weakness could pierce deception. Looking at the man again, I saw the danger. He was a mirror of everything people longed for, a leader, a savior, an answer. But beneath it all was emptiness. And I realized then that this was not just about him, it was a warning for every generation. When Jesus showed me what would happen after the mask fell, I felt both sorrow and hope at once. The truth would not come quietly, it would shake hearts, shatter illusions, and strip away false security. And when it did, many would not know how to stand. I saw crowds scatter. Some walked away angry, bitter, and wounded. They had believed so strongly in the image of a man that when he fell, their faith crumbled with him. Their hearts were broken, not just by his failure, but by the realization that they had built their trust on sand. But then, in the midst of the confusion, I saw another group. Smaller, quieter, but steady. They weren't the loudest, nor the most celebrated. They were the ones who had clung to Jesus himself all along. Their faith had been tested by fire, and instead of collapsing, it grew purer. These were the ones who stood not to condemn, but to heal. I saw them reaching out to the broken, listening to those who felt betrayed, and gently guiding them back to the one who never fails. They weren't pointing to themselves, or to any movement, but to Christ alone. And in their humility, light began to shine again. Then I saw one young man in particular. He had once walked away, disillusioned and hardened, because he had been hurt by lies. But when he heard my voice telling what I had seen, something stirred in him. Not because my words were perfect, but because they were honest. He returned, not to me, not to a church building, but to Jesus. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered, "Truth has a voice, but healing has a face. And that face is Jesus." In that moment, I understood the heart of my mission. It was not only to warn, but also to call back. Not only to expose deception, but to remind people that even after betrayal, there is still a shepherd who gathers his sheep. The unmasking would be painful, but it was mercy. Because only when the false is torn away can the real be seen. And the real is always Him, Jesus, the healer of broken hearts. Friend, if you long for that healing, if you want His mercy to cover your life, leave a comment below. Let it be your step of faith. For when you open your heart, Jesus will not only show you truth, He will give you grace and make you whole again. Jesus extended His hand to me again. I hesitated for a moment, knowing that every step with Him was taking me deeper into a truth I could never unsee. But I reached out. The moment His hand touched mine, the world around us shifted. The garden, the hill, even the vision of the crowd faded into nothingness. We were moving upward, not flying, not falling, just being carried into a realm I had no words for. A brilliance surrounded us, holy and alive, until suddenly we stopped. Before us stretched something so breathtaking I could barely comprehend it. It wasn't just beauty, it was eternity itself. I felt as if every longing, every ache, every dream of belonging had led me here. My soul whispered, "This is what I was made for." But then, the light dimmed. Slowly, the atmosphere grew heavy. The warmth turned to cold. The peace was replaced by a weight of sorrow. I felt it before I even saw it, darkness. It pressed in like chains, suffocating and hollow. The sound of worship was gone. The music of life had vanished. "Where are we?" I asked, my voice trembling. Jesus' eyes were filled with pain. "This is the place where time has ended. A place never meant for them, but for the enemy and his angels." I looked, and I saw souls, people like me, but not at peace. Their faces carried regret that words couldn't capture. Some cried out, some turned away in defiance, others sat in silence, consumed by despair. Tears blurred my vision. Can they leave? Is there still time for them? He shook his head gently, sorrow etched in every line of his face. Time has ended here. Judgment has come. The weight of his words pierced me. For the first time, I saw not just the cost of deception, but the cost of ignoring his voice. Every soul had been given chances. Every heart had heard whispers of truth. But many chose silence, and now the silence was eternal. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Jesus let me see it because I needed to understand, eternity is real, and choice is unavoidable. Love was offered, but not all received it. As we turned back toward the light, he spoke softly, "Elena, you must tell them. Life is more than years lived, it is preparation for eternity." And eternity has two doors. Each soul must choose. When I opened my eyes again, it was not the garden, not the hill, not the place of eternity. It was the classroom, fluorescent lights above me, chaos all around, voices shouting my name. My chest burned as air tore back into my lungs, and my body trembled under the weight of life returning. I was alive. But I was not the same. For 11 minutes, I had been gone. And in those 11 minutes, Jesus had shown me eternity, truth, and deception. He had placed in me a mission that weighed far more than my age, yet carried the hope of heaven. In the days that followed, doctors were baffled. They spoke of miracles, of how I should not have survived without brain damage, how my heart had stopped too long. But I knew it wasn't chance. It was His hand. He had sent me back because there were words to be spoken, a testimony to be carried. Sometimes, I still ache to be in His presence again. I still long for the peace that felt like home. But now I carry something else, a fire in my soul, a certainty that this life is not the end, that every choice matters because eternity is real. I share this story not to glorify myself, but to glorify the one who met me when I had no breath left. The one who called me by name. The one who told me that truth must be spoken, that masks will fall, and that His sheep must learn to know His voice above every other. Friend, I don't know where you are in your faith, or what burdens you carry. Maybe you've been hurt, maybe you've doubted, maybe you've wondered if God even sees you. But I promise you this, the same Jesus who saw me, sees you now. He knows your name. He hasn't forgotten you. If you long for His blessing and His shelter over your life, leave a comment below. Let it be your yes to Him. For the time is short, but His love is endless. And when you call, He will answer.